right now. You might feel the lingering weight of a performance that never truly ends. Even in the silence of your room, there is a ghost of an audience watching, waiting for you to say the right thing, to show the right face, to be the person everyone expects you to be. You have spent your day carefully adjusting the expression on your face, smoothing out the edges of your personality, and perhaps tucking your true feelings behind a veil of competence. You are so exhausted by this invisible stage that even when the lights finally dim and the house is empty, you cannot stop rehearsing. Your mind is still running through the lines, still checking the costume for tears, still worrying that if you were to stand perfectly still for a moment, the world would see through the artifice and find nothing there at all. This is a weary way to live, dear friend. It is like wearing a garment made of heavy, stiff silk that never quite fits the shape of your own skin. You have become so accustomed to the weight of it that you have forgotten how it feels to simply breathe without holding your posture. The room around you is cooling now, and the sounds of the day have receded into the distance. Let the heavy fabric of your expectations rest in the corner. There is no performance required in this space. No one is watching. No one is waiting for you to impress them or to entertain them or to hold yourself together for their sake. You are not broken because you feel this need to hide. You are not a failure because you feel small or afraid. Beneath the layers you have stitched together, what you are feeling is a very human reaction to a world that asks us to be polished, to be constant, and to be invulnerable. You have simply learned to survive by masking your own heart, and now that mask has become a part of your daily routine. Tonight, we are going to set that routine aside. We are not going to force yourself to be raw or to be completely unmasked. Before you are ready, we are only going to practice the quiet, simple art of letting the costume breathe. There is a strange and beautiful paradox in this work. You have spent years believing that your safety depends on how well you maintain the mask, on how beautifully you move, and on how perfectly you recite your lines. But the deeper wisdom we are exploring tonight suggests something quite different. It suggests that your safety is not found in the performance. It is found in the space where you stop performing altogether. You think that if you drop the mask, you will be seen as empty or flawed. But the truth is that the mask itself is the only thing standing between you and the peace you are looking for. You are not the character you play. You are the space where the dancing happens. Maybe you have felt this way for a long time, carrying the burden of being someone for everyone else. Perhaps you look in the mirror and see only the ways you fall short of the image you have cultivated, the ways your own face feels like a mask that is beginning to crack. If you feel this heavy, itching tension under your skin, it is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign that you are waking up to the reality of your own life. You have been holding your breath, waiting for the applause that never really satisfies the ache inside. And tonight, you can finally exhale. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You do not have to fix your personality or decide who you will be tomorrow morning. Take a slow breath. If it feels right, feel the texture of your own skin against the cool sheets. Feel the way your body is supported by the bed. You do not need to do anything with your muscles right now. You can let them go. Let them be as heavy and as soft as they need to be. You do not need to command your heart to beat or your mind to be silent. The heartbeat has its own rhythm, and the mind has its own way of turning. Just like the tide, you can stop being the choreographer of your own existence for a little while. Imagine you are standing in a large, quiet hall made of dark, cool stone. In the center of the floor is a stack of heavy, ornate garments. These are the costumes you have worn for so long. They are embroidered with the expectations of your parents, the judgments of your peers, and the fragile hopes of your own younger self. They are beautiful in their own way, but they are heavy. They drag on the floor. They constrict your movement. They make it hard to stand upright without effort. You have been dancing in these clothes for a lifetime, spinning in circles, terrified that a single thread might fray. But here, in the quiet of this night, you can walk away from that pile of cloth. You do not have to burn them. You do not have to throw them out. You can just step back and watch them. Lie there. You are not the silk. You are not the embroidery. You are not the character that was meant to wear these things. You are the person who has been wearing them. And you are the person who is now, for the first time, realizing that you can breathe without them. Does this feel like a loss? Does it feel as though you are losing your identity, your purpose, or the way you have defined yourself for all these years? It is natural to feel a tremor of fear when you loosen the ties, but notice what remains. When the costume is gone, you are still here. You are still breathing. You are still whole. The emptiness you feared is not a void. It is a field of potential. It is the silence that allows music to exist. It is the darkness that allows the stars to be seen. You are entering that field. Now, you are moving into the silence where you do not have to convince anyone of your worth. You might find that your mind keeps trying to reach back for the clothes. It might tell you that you are not safe if you are not dressed for the occasion. It might tell you that you will be judged or forgotten or lost if you do not perform. When these thoughts arise, do not fight them. Do not judge yourself for having them. They are just old habits, like the muscle memory of a dancer who has practiced the same steps for 1,000 nights. Acknowledge them. Notice that they are just thoughts, and then let them go, like a veil drifting to the floor. You do not have to act on them. You do not have to believe them. You only have to recognize that you are the one observing the thoughts, and not the thoughts themselves. We are entering a space of quiet observation. You have been the dancer, and you have been the critic, and you have been the audience, all at the same time. It is exhausting work, and you have been doing it for so long. Tonight, you can resign from all three roles. You can just be the space in the hall. You can be the cool air that flows through the windows. You can be the stillness that sits on the floor and watches the shadows lengthen across the stones. There is no rehearsal. For this, there is no script to master. You have finally arrived at the only place where the performance ends and the rest begins. As we continue, we will explore this together. We will look at the way our minds try to hold on to the veils, and we will find the courage to let them fall. Not because we have to, but because we are ready to be seen as we truly are. You are already safe, and you are already here. Let the world carry the weight of its own expectations for a few hours. You have done enough for today. You have carried the mask long enough now. Just listen to the sound of your own natural breath and allow yourself to simply exist in the quiet that is already waiting for you. In a province far from here, where the mountain mist clings to the pine trees until the afternoon sun finally burns it away, there lived a young man named Kenji. He worked in a small, remote village, serving as a clerk to the local magistrate. His days were filled with the endless recording of accounts, the settling of petty disputes, and the meticulous arrangement of ledgers. Kenji was known for his extreme diligence. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that if he could only track every coin and every grievance with absolute precision, he would create a life of perfect order and safety. Kenji kept his records in a heavy, bound ledger that he carried everywhere. It was his most prized possession. Its cover was fashioned from worn, dark leather, and the pages within were stiff, thick parchment that smelled faintly of ink and age. He took a strange, anxious comfort in this book. Every evening, he would sit by the flicker of a single oil lamp and review the day's entries. He checked for mistakes, he corrected his penmanship, and he worried over the tiny errors he imagined he had made. He felt that if one entry were flawed, the entire foundation of his future would collapse into chaos. His hands were often stained with ink, and his shoulders were permanently hunched, as if he were constantly shielding the ledger from a sudden gust of wind. He did not sleep well. Often he would wake in the middle of the night, certain he had forgotten to record a minor transaction. He would strike a light, open the book, and scan the lines until his eyes burned. He felt he was being watched by an unseen auditor, a presence that demanded he be flawless. This was the stage he had built for himself, a theatre of one, where the performance was the only thing standing between him and a deep, gnawing sense of worthlessness. One autumn afternoon, while the village was quiet and the scent of wood smoke hung heavy in the air, Kenji heard rumors of a reclusive old monk who had settled in a dilapidated shrine further up the mountain path. The villagers spoke of him with a mixture of confusion and reverence, saying that he lived with nothing but a broom and a chipped wooden bowl. Driven by a vague, desperate hope that this man might offer a way to lighten the burden of his ledgers, Kenji decided to make the climb. He wrapped his precious ledger in a protective cloth, tucked it beneath his arm, and began the ascent. The path was steep and tangled with roots that snagged his sandals. As he walked, his mind continued its tireless work. He rehearsed exactly how he would present his problem to the monk. He worried about the proper etiquette, the right way to sit, and how he would explain the terrifying need he felt to keep every detail of his life perfectly accounted for. His legs were trembling, and his mind was a tangled knot of anticipation and anxiety. The shrine was little more than a wooden roof, supported by weathered, mossy pillars. The monk was there, sitting on the edge of the stone platform, staring at a small patch of dirt. He was an old man, with deep lines etched into his face, like the channels carved into rock by a mountain stream. He did not look up as Kenji approached. He was holding a small, smooth stone, turning it over and over in his calloused palms. Kenji hesitated, then bowed deeply. He stood in silence for a long time, waiting to be acknowledged. Finally, the monk shifted his gaze, not to Kenji's eyes, but to the heavy bundle tucked under Kenji's arm. The old man nodded once, a gesture that seemed to suggest he knew exactly what was being carried. He set the stone down on the ground, stood up with a slow, grinding sound in his knees, and picked up a worn bamboo broom. Without a word, the monk began to sweep the stone platform. He moved with a rhythm that was almost hypnotic, each stroke of the broom covering a small, precise arc. He swept away the fallen pine needles and the loose dust. Kenji watched, feeling his frustration begin to bubble beneath the surface. He had climbed this mountain for wisdom, for a solution to his crushing sense of duty, and all he was getting was a demonstration of basic labor. The monk stopped, leaned the broom against a pillar and gestured to the open space beside him. Kenji sat, keeping his ledger clutched firmly to his chest, as if it were a shield protecting his very heart. The monk pointed at the ledger. He did not speak, but his eyes were bright, filled with a terrifying, gentle clarity. Kenji placed the ledger on the floor. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of vulnerability, as if he were undressing in public. The monk reached out and opened the ledger to a random page. He did not read the words. He did not check the columns of numbers. He simply ran his fingers over the texture of the parchment, feeling the inks, indentations. Then he looked at the open space on the floor. He picked up a second object that had been resting near the threshold, a plain, heavy clay bowl. He set the bowl on the floor and looked at Kenji. The monk moved his hands, not in a sign language that Kenji recognized, but in a motion that mimicked the act of holding. He held his hands together, fingers interlaced, and then he slowly, intentionally, opened them. He looked at the ledger, then back at the empty space between them. He gestured for Kenji to pick up the ledger again. Kenji obeyed, his knuckles white. The monk then gestured toward the bowl, then back toward the open space of the mountain air. Kenji felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The monk was asking him to put the ledger down, not on the floor, but to let the weight of it be released into the atmosphere. The old man smiled, a brief, fleeting movement of the lips, and began to sweep again. He was not asking Kenji to become a monk. He was not asking him to abandon his duties. He was asking him to consider the possibility that he was carrying something that was not actually necessary for his survival. The afternoon light began to shift, turning the forest floor into a sea of orange and gold. Kenji watched the monk sweep, the sound of the dry bristles against stone filling the silence. It was a simple sound, but to Kenji, it sounded like an accusation. Every sweep of the broom was a rejection of the complex, agonizing system he had built to keep his life in order. He felt a profound, aching loneliness. If he were not the clerk who managed the ledgers, if he were not the man who ensured that every detail was accounted for, then who was he? The monk stopped sweeping again. He picked up the clay bowl and held it out to Kenji. Inside the bowl, there was nothing but a few loose grains of rice and a single withered pine needle. The monk tipped the bowl, letting the contents fall into the dirt. He then held the bowl upside down. The vessel was empty. The monk looked at Kenji and waited. It was a request, a silent, powerful demand to understand the nature of the bowl. Kenji looked at the bowl. Then, at the ledger, he felt the heavy, rigid weight of the book against his ribs. He felt the light, hollow space of the bowl in the monk's hand. The monk did not preach. He did not offer a profound philosophy. He simply held the empty bowl and watched the wind stir the dust that he had just swept. Kenji realized, with a sinking heart, that his ledger was the source of his exhaustion. Yet, he could not imagine an existence where it was not present. The story is not yet telling us to change, but it is showing us the weight of what we carry. It is showing us that we have become the keeper of the account, rather than the person living the life that is being recorded. As you listen, allow yourself to feel the weight of your own ledger. What is it that you feel you must constantly check, constantly verify, and constantly account for, lest the order of your life fall away? You do not have to put it down yet. You do not have to be the monk with the empty bowl. You only need to notice the weight of the book against your own skin. Notice how your muscles tighten to hold it, and notice the ache that comes from never, ever putting it down. This simple scene with the monk and the ledger touches on something profound. Kenji's struggle was not really with the numbers in his books or the demands of his office. His real struggle was with the belief that his safety was something he had to manufacture through sheer force of will. He thought that if he could account for everything, he would finally be beyond the reach of chaos. He believed that if he kept a perfect record, he would be immune to the sting of error or the judgment of the world. But the monk, with his empty bowl and his simple sweeping, was pointing to a different reality altogether. The suffering in Kenji's life did not come merely from the work he did. It came from the way his mind had turned that work into an identity. He had become the ledger itself. Every stroke of the pen, every correction, every moment of anxiety was an attempt to cement his place in the world. He was adding layer upon a layer of emotional weight to his daily tasks, convinced that this heavy armor was the only thing protecting him from being exposed. The monk's silence was not an absence of guidance. It was a mirror, reflecting back to Kenji the truth that he was clutching a book that no one else was actually reading. When we look at our own lives, we often find ourselves in a similar posture. We carry our own versions of that ledger. It might be the way we rehearse our conversations, in the shower, trying to polish our responses until they are perfect. It might be the way we constantly scan the faces of those around us, searching for evidence that we are being accepted, approved of, or at least not judged. We create these elaborate internal systems, these invisible ledgers where we track our successes and our failures, our debts and our virtues. We think that by keeping these accounts, we are staying in control. But this is the paradox. The very effort we use to secure our peace is the exact thing that keeps us from it. When we turn our attention into an accountant, constantly tallying our own worth, we lose the ability to simply be present. We lose the ability to see the world as it is because we are too busy filtering it through the lens of our own performance. We start to see life not as an unfolding reality, but as a series of tests that we must pass. And because no one ever actually stops grading us in our own minds, we are perpetually exhausted. The wisdom here is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is not about abandoning your responsibilities or throwing away your life's work. It is about understanding that the additional weight you are carrying is not required. You do not need to layer your pain with the constant, anxious demand that it be otherwise. When you feel a moment of fear or a moment of uncertainty, that is one kind of experience. But when your mind immediately rushes in to judge that fear, to label it as a weakness, or to fear the fact that you are feeling it, that is when the suffering multiplies. Imagine you are holding a cup of water. It is heavy, yes, but it is manageable. Now imagine that you are also holding a heavy stone and a stack of books, and you are trying to keep your balance while someone watches you, waiting for you to stumble. That is the experience of the extra weight. The first weight is the natural difficulty of being human. The second weight is the mind saying that the first weight should not be there, that you should be better than this, that you should be further along than you are. That second weight is where the exhaustion lives. The monk's empty bowl is a teaching on the nature of being. An empty bowl is not a failure of a bowl. Its emptiness is its function. It is ready to receive whatever is needed. But if you fill a bowl with rocks, it cannot hold water. If you fill your mind with the constant need to prove your own solidity, you cannot be filled with the clarity of the present moment. You become a vessel that is too full of its own effort to notice the light. When we talk about letting go, we are not talking about vanishing into nothingness. We are talking about the deliberate, gentle practice of setting down the heavy things we have been holding for so long. We are talking about recognizing that you are not the sum of your anxieties. You are not the ledger you have been keeping. You are the space where the ledger sits. You are the awareness that notices the ledger, the one who can choose to look at it, or look away from it, or simply let it rest on the table. This is the shift that changes everything. It is the movement from being the actor who is desperate for applause to being the audience, who can finally sit back and watch the play. You do not have to stop dancing. You do not have to stop moving through the world. But you can stop worrying about the costume. You can stop checking the mirror every 5 minutes to see if you are still worthy of being on the stage. You can learn to dance because the music is playing, not because you are terrified of what happens when the music stops. Many of us feel that if we were to truly let go, we would fall apart. We fear that the mask is the only thing holding our bones together. But this is the great secret that the monk was showing. You are not holding yourself together with your effort. You are already held together by a force that does not require your permission or your management. Your breath happens, your heart beats. The world turns. The sun rises without your accounting. You are part of that same ancient, steady current. You have been working so hard to be the architect of your own stability. But you are not the architect. You are the inhabitant, and you are allowed to live in the house without constantly checking the foundation for cracks. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to admit that the performance has been long and that you are ready for a rest. Nothing in the universe is asking you to be perfect tonight. Nothing is asking you to justify your existence. The stillness you feel right now, the quiet space in the room, is the same stillness that holds the stars and the trees. It is not something you have to create. It is something you can finally join. This wisdom is beginning to settle into the marrow of your bones. You do not need to memorize these words. You do not need to analyze them or write them down. You only need to let them rest in the back of your mind, like a soft light in a distant room. As you continue to listen, feel your own heart becoming a little more spacious. The tighter you hold, the more you suffer. But when you relax your grip, even just for a heartbeat, you find that the world does not fall away. It only becomes clearer. There is a natural rhythm to this letting go. It does not happen all at once. It happens in these tiny, quiet moments of realization. It happens when you are in the middle of a thought and you suddenly notice that you are thinking. It happens when you are in the middle of a worry and you suddenly notice that you are breathing. That moment of noticing is the moment the ledger is set down. That moment of noticing is the moment the monk picks up the broom. It is the simple, honest recognition of what is, without the extra, painful layer of what should be. You are doing this right now, just by listening. You are moving toward the quiet center of yourself, and you are leaving the theater of the mind behind. The stage is dimming, the audience has gone home, and you are finally alone in the best way possible. You are in the company of your own natural, unburdened self, and you have everything you need. You have the ability to notice, you have the ability to breathe, and you have the ability to rest. And for tonight, that is the only work you are called to do. Now, we can bring this wisdom into the quiet inner space where you are resting. You do not have to move. You do not have to change anything about your posture or your breathing. Just allow yourself to be exactly as you are. A person who has spent a long day performing. and who is now finally beginning to set the heavy costume down. If it feels right, you might close your eyes or simply let them soften, resting your gaze on the dim, familiar shapes of your own room. Feel the weight of your body pressing into the surface beneath you. Notice the points of contact where the fabric touches your skin. You are supported. The earth is holding you, and you do not need to hold yourself up any longer. Take a slow, natural breath, not because you have to deepen it, but simply because the body wants to release some of the tension it has been keeping. As you breathe out, let the muscles around your jaw loosen. Let your shoulders, which have spent so many hours hunched in preparation for the next cue, finally drop away from your ears. There is no audience here, and there is no script to follow. You are not practicing to be perfect, and you are not practicing to reach a specific state of mind. You are only practicing the simple, gentle art of being present with yourself. Imagine the ledger that Kenji carried in your own mind. See if you can identify the heavy, bound book you have been dragging through your own days. It might feel like a collection of fears, or a stack of things you think you must fix, or a list of ways you feel you have fallen short. It does not have to be a literal book. It might be a persistent, anxious tone in your own thoughts, or a tightness in your chest that appears whenever you feel you are not being enough. Just name it for a moment, silently. Give it a shape or a texture or a weight. Does it feel like old leather or cold stone, or perhaps a bundle of thick, rough silk? You do not need to read the pages. You do not need to correct the entries. You do not need to justify why this weight is there. You only need to notice that you are holding it. Notice the way your hands are clenched to keep a grip on it. Notice the way your mind feels tethered to this object, afraid that if you let it fall, you will lose your sense of order or your sense of self. It is a very human fear. It is the fear of being seen as empty. But look closer at that empty space beneath your grip. That space is not a void. It is the ground. It is the place where you can finally stand without the effort of the performance. If it feels right, imagine taking that heavy ledger, or whatever shape your burden has taken, and gently setting it down on the floor beside you. You do not have to throw it away. You do not have to destroy it. You can just let it rest right there, within reach, but no longer in your hands. Feel the difference in your own shoulders. Feel the shift in the rhythm of your own heart when you are no longer the one carrying the weight. It might feel strange at first. You might feel a sudden, quiet panic, a whisper from your mind, saying that you should pick it back up, that you are not safe if you are not holding it. That is only a habit. It is the memory of the dancer, the muscle memory of a lifetime of holding on. You do not have to listen to that whisper. You can simply notice it. See the whisper as a thought, a small, passing cloud, and let it drift through the vast, quiet space of your own awareness. You are the one who is watching the thought, and because you are the one watching, you are already larger than the thought itself. You are already more than the worry. You are the space where the worry is occurring. And that space is peaceful, and it is deep, and it is entirely untouched by the content of the book. If you find yourself reaching back for the burden, that is also okay. Do not judge yourself for it. Do not tell yourself you are failing at the practice. Just smile in your own quiet way and notice that you have reached for it again. Then, with the same gentleness you would use to comfort a tired friend, set it down one more time. You are learning that the weight is not who you are. You are the one who can choose to carry it, or the one who can choose to let it rest. This realization is the beginning of a different kind of freedom. As you lie here, feel the coolness of the air on your skin. Notice the sound of your own breath, the way it moves in and out, without you having to manage it. This is the truth of your existence. Everything you need to be alive, everything you need to be you, is already happening. You do not have to perform your way into being allowed to exist. You do not have to be polished or successful or perfectly accounted for to deserve the quiet. The quiet is your birthright. It is the silence that was here before the ledger, and it is the silence that will be here after the ledger is forgotten. If there is a specific feeling of shame, or a specific worry about a conversation, or a fear about tomorrow that keeps pulling you back, let that be the object you set down. Put it into the imaginary bowl beside you. Let it sit there in the dark. It is not going anywhere, and you are not abandoning it. You are only giving yourself the grace of a few moments without it. You are giving your nervous system the chance to learn that you can survive without being in a constant state of defense. You are teaching your body that it is safe to be tired. You are teaching your mind that it is safe to stop rehearsing. This practice is not about clearing your mind of all thoughts. That would be like asking the wind to stop blowing. You are not trying to stop the thinking. You are trying to change your relationship with the thinker. You are becoming the person who can see the thoughts as events, like shadows moving across the floor, rather than as commands that you must obey. When a thought comes, let it come. When it goes, let it go. You do not have to hold the door open for it. You do not have to build a home for it. You can just let it be a guest that eventually leaves the house. Notice the softness in your fingers. Notice the space between your teeth. Notice the way your chest rises and falls. A gentle, rhythmic movement that knows exactly what to do. You are doing a beautiful thing right now. You are giving yourself the gift of being enough, exactly as you are, without the need for any external validation. You are proving to yourself that you are not the costume, you are not the mask, and you are not the heavy book of accounts. You are the stillness that remains. Stay with this feeling for a moment longer. The ledger is on the floor. You are sitting on the stone, and the mountain air is cool against your face. You do not need to go anywhere else. You do not need to solve the mysteries of your life before you sleep. You have already done enough today, and more than enough. And the ledgers will still be there, but for now you have been invited to sit in the shrine of your own awareness. You are safe. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be just as tired and just as human as you truly are. Years later, when the memory of the magistrate clerk had faded into the mountain fog, another traveller arrived at the same shrine. Her name was Hana. She was a master weaver who had spent her life creating tapestries of such intricate, breathtaking beauty that people travelled from distant provinces just to catch a glimpse of them. Hana was terrified of being found out. She lived in a constant, vibrating state of anxiety, convinced that her talent was a fragile mask she was wearing, and that at any moment the threads would unravel, and everyone would see she was nothing more than a common, fearful woman. She came to the shrine not because she wanted to learn, but because she could no longer bear the sound of her own mind. She carried with her a satchel filled with unfinished tapestries, pieces of silk so delicate they felt like ghosts between her fingers. She believed that if she could just find the perfect pattern, the one that would hide her flaws forever, she would finally be safe. She climbed the mountain with a heart that felt like a bird trapped in a cage of her own making. The monk was older now. He moved with even greater deliberation, his steps quiet against the mossy stones. He had left the broom behind. Now, he spent his days sitting by a small stone-lined pool, watching the way the wind moved the water. When Hannah arrived, she did not wait to be invited. She spilled her tapestries onto the platform, explaining in a rush of breathless, jagged sentences how she had to fix them, how the patterns were crooked, and how she was terrified that if she stopped weaving for even a single night, the truth of her insignificance would be exposed. The monk listened. He did not look at the intricate silk. He reached into the satchel and pulled out a single, heavy wooden needle that Hannah used for her thickest threads. He handed it back to her, then pointed to the stone pool. He made a motion with his hand, imitating the act of weaving, and then suddenly, he pushed his hands apart, mimicking the sound of fabric tearing. Hannah gasped. She felt as though he had reached into her chest and pulled out the very thing she was trying to hide. She began to weep, not out of sadness, but out of a sudden, searing recognition of how much energy she had spent, keeping her life from tearing. The monk did not offer comfort in the way she expected. He did not tell her she was a great artist, or that her worries were baseless. He simply stood up and walked to the edge of the pool. He picked up a handful of dry, brown leaves and dropped them onto the water. The leaves drifted, caught in the ripples. Some spun in circles. Some drifted toward the edge and were swept away by the overflow. Some sank beneath the surface. The monk looked at Hannah, then at the leaves, and finally at the wooden needle in her hand. He held out his own hand, palm upward, and then slowly curled his fingers into a loose, open fist. He shook his head. Then he opened his palm again. He was showing her that the struggle was not in the weaving. The struggle was in the refusal to let the pattern change. Hannah sat by the pool for 3 days. She did not touch her tapestries. She did not try to fix the patterns in her mind. She watched the leaves. She watched the way the water changed. Every time the wind shifted, at first her mind screamed at her to return to the work. It told her that she was wasting time, that she was failing, that her reputation would be ruined if she stopped. She felt the familiar, itching tension in her shoulders. She felt the urge to grab the needle and start sewing, to prove to herself that she could still perform. But each time the urge flared, she remembered the monk's open palm. She would take a breath, feeling the cool mountain air move through her lungs, and she would simply observe the urge. She realized that the urge to weave was not a command from the universe. It was a reflex, a survival strategy she had crafted. When she was young and afraid of being cast out, she saw that she had been weaving not to create beauty, but to stitch her identity to the approval of others. On the 4th morning, Hannah picked up one of her unfinished tapestries. It was a beautiful piece, but it was knotted with the stress of her effort. She looked at the threads. She realized she could spend another 10 years trying to smooth them out, or she could simply let the knots exist. She did not rip the fabric. She did not throw it away. She took the wooden needle, and for the first time in her life, she began to weave without looking at the pattern in her mind. She wove with her hands, not with her anxiety. She allowed the threads to sit where they wanted it to sit. If a knot appeared, she simply let it be part of the design. She did not try to hide it. She did not try to explain it away. She wove with a quiet, steady rhythm, her breath aligning with the movement of her fingers. She was no longer a dancer performing for an audience. She was simply a woman working with silk. The monk watched from the distance. He did not praise her. He did not come over to inspect the work. He simply nodded, a slow, gentle movement that recognized what had occurred. Hannah felt a change in her own body. The tightness in her jaw was gone. The frantic energy that usually hummed beneath her skin had settled into a steady, quiet hum of presence. She was not magically healed. She was not a different person. She was simply a woman who had stopped fighting the reality of her own hands. When she finally stood up to leave, she left the satchel of tapestries behind. The monk did not stop her. She left them on the stone platform, a gift to the wind and the rain. She did not need them to define her anymore. As she walked down the mountain path, she felt the weight of the air, the texture of the earth beneath her sandals, and the rhythm of her own stride. She was empty-handed, and for the first time, she felt absolutely, entirely full. This transformation was not about the art she made. It was about the way she stopped making art, a requirement for her own existence. She realized that she did not have to weave to be worthy of the sun, or the trees, or the quiet path ahead of her. She was allowed to just be. The suffering she had carried had been a form of bondage, a belief that she had to keep moving, keep creating, and keep perfecting, or else she would vanish. But the mountain air was still there, the trees were still swaying, and the sun was still rising, and none of it cared about her tapestries. This is the deeper lesson. You do not have to become a master weaver of your own life to be acceptable. You do not have to have a perfectly finished tapestry to deserve your rest. You can have knots, you can have mistakes, you can have unfinished projects. You can have a life that looks, from the outside, like a series of frayed threads. And none of that matters, because the person doing the living is not the tapestry. You are the one who is witnessing the weaving, and you are already free. As you lie here, imagine your own life as a piece of weaving. There are bright colors in it. There are dark shadows. There are knots where you tried to hold on too tight, and there are gaps where you were too afraid to show yourself. But look at the whole piece from a distance. Does it have to be perfect? Does it have to be a masterpiece to be beautiful? The beauty is in the honesty of the threads. The beauty is in the fact that you have been weaving through fear and through joy, through the long nights and the short days. You can put the needle down now. You can leave the loom in the room. The work is not going anywhere, and the world is not waiting for your perfection. You have done enough. You have woven enough. The pattern is what it is, and it is enough. Your hands are tired, and your spirit is ready to drift. You can let the threads go. You can let the pattern dissolve into the darkness of the night, knowing that you will be here, whole and steady, when the sun returns. Take a breath and feel the way your body is beginning to trust the stillness. The fear of being found out, the fear of being empty, the fear of not being enough. All of these are just threads. They are just patterns in the weaving. You are the weaver, and you are also the one who is watching the weaver. You are the space where all of this is happening, and that space is wide, and it is calm, and it is perfectly, beautifully empty. There is nothing left to do. The weaving is done for today. You are just here, breathing, resting, and letting the pattern fade into the deep, quiet peace of the night. There is a subtle, almost invisible architecture to the suffering we carry. It is not built from the heavy events of our lives, but from the way we interpret them in the quiet corners of our minds. When something goes wrong, when a relationship shifts, or a goal remains just out of reach, there is a natural, sharp ache that comes with that experience. This is the first kind of pain. It is the simple, honest reaction of a heart that cares. It is like the cold sting of the wind against your face on a winter walk. It is unpleasant and it is real, but it is not a tragedy. The tragedy begins only when we refuse to let the wind pass. We begin to build high walls. We close the shutters of our inner lives, and we start to argue with the weather itself. We tell ourselves that the wind should not be blowing, or that we should have known better than to walk outside in the first place, or that our cold face is proof that we are fundamentally flawed. We start to analyze the wind. We worry about when it will blow next. We rehearse the conversations we would have with the wind if we could only get it to listen. This is the second kind of pain. This is the weight of our own resistance. The mind is a master of this secondary suffering. It has learned over many years that the best way to handle the unknown is to create a complex, rigid map of how things ought to be. It craves the safety of certainty, so it clings to patterns and expectations. Like a climber clutching a narrow ledge. When reality does not match the map, the mind does not check the map for errors. Instead, it blames the traveler. It treats every uncertainty as a personal failing and every mistake as an indictment of your worth. You are not trying to be difficult, dear friend. You are trying to find your footing in a world that never stands still. Consider the way we rehearse the future. We run through thousands of scenarios, looking for the one that keeps us safe. As if, by preparing for every catastrophe, we could somehow prevent the unexpected. We treat these imagined future shadows as if they were solid walls, and we navigate our daily lives with the heavy caution of someone walking through a minefield. The irony is that we are the ones who planted the mines. We are the ones who keep the map of disasters fresh in our minds, and we are the ones who suffer the exhaustion of constantly avoiding them. Then, there is the way we treat the past. We keep the ledger of our failures open, checking the balance of our regrets every single night. We think that by reviewing these entries, we are learning, but we are only making the wounds deeper. We are keeping the hurt alive, nursing it with our attention, as if the pain were a small, wounded animal that needed our constant care to survive. But the pain does not need our protection. It needs the space to heal, and that space only opens when we stop replaying the story. This is where the wisdom of the path offers a different way. It suggests that you can observe these mental habits without needing to believe them. You can see the urge to control as a reflex, like a hand jerking away from a flame, without having to follow the reflex into a full-blown reaction. You can notice the voice of self-judgment without having to treat it as the ultimate truth of who you are. The voice is just a sound in the hall. It is a thought that has been practiced so often it has developed the rhythm of a heartbeat, but it is still just a thought. When you feel that familiar pull of anxiety, that urge to fix, or to justify, or to defend, stop for a moment. Instead of moving, just breathe. Notice the physical sensation of the struggle. Where do you feel it? Is it a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, or a shallow, rapid pace in your breathing? Do not try to change it. Just meet it. Say to yourself, quietly, "This is the feeling of my mind, trying to keep me safe." Acknowledge that the intention is good, even if the method is causing you suffering. This simple acknowledgement is the beginning of compassion. It is the act of seeing yourself with the same kindness you would offer a child who is afraid of the dark. You do not scold the child for being afraid. You do not tell them they are foolish. You simply sit with them, hold their hand, and let them know that they are not alone. You can do the same for your own mind. You can sit with your worries, acknowledge their presence, and remind yourself that the storm outside does not mean the house is falling down. Most of our suffering is built on the false belief that we are separate from the world and that we must protect our own borders against it. We feel that if we let go of our vigilance, we will be swept away. But we are not separate. We are the current. We are the movement. We are the change. When we fight the reality of our lives, we are like a fish trying to fight the river. The river is not our enemy. It is the very medium through which we move. The peace you want is not waiting for you at the end of a perfect, error-free life. It is not waiting for you. When you finally finish the task, when you finally solve the problem, or when you finally become the person you think you should be. Peace is the act of dropping the heavy map. It is the act of stepping off the ledge and discovering that you are already on the ground. It is the act of realizing that you were never in danger of vanishing, no matter how frayed your edges might appear to be. You may be wondering how to live in this way when the world still demands so much of you. How can you be present when you have responsibilities, when you have worries, when you have a life that keeps moving? You do not have to leave your life behind. You do not have to retreat to a mountain shrine. You can practice this right here, in the middle of your everyday existence. You can practice it in the gap between the thought and the action. You can practice it by choosing just once to not follow the frantic voice that says you must be better, faster, or more perfect. Each time you choose to sit with your experience instead of running from it, you are rewriting the architecture of your life. You are moving from a state of constant, defensive reaction to a state of calm, intentional being. It is not a permanent, magical change that happens overnight. It is a slow, steady, daily practice. It is like the way a stream carves a path through stone. It takes time, but it is relentless, and it is deep. There is a profound, quiet strength in letting go. When you stop trying to force the outcome, you find that you have more energy for the process. When you stop treating your feelings as enemies to be conquered, you find that they become teachers, showing you exactly where you need to cultivate more kindness. When you stop using your past as a weapon, you find that your future begins to look less like a battlefield and more like an open field. You have spent so long being the manager of your own suffering. You have been the one who schedules the worries, the one who audits the failures, and the one who dictates the performance. You are tired. You have earned the right to be a different kind of observer. You can let the manager go. You can resign from the position of holding everything together. You can leave the office, lock the door behind you, and walk out into the quiet of your own natural life. As you listen to the rhythm of your breath, feel how simple it is to exist. You are not a problem to be solved. You are not a project to be completed. You are a person who is experiencing the miracle of being alive, and that is enough. You have survived every day that has come before this one, and you have the strength to meet whatever happens tomorrow. You do not need to prepare for it tonight. You do not need to account for it tonight. You only need to be here with yourself in the soft, dark comfort of your own awareness, the voice of the critic in your mind. Of course, it is just a habit, but you do not have to grant it the authority it used to hold. You can listen to it as you would listen to the wind or the sound of traffic or the distant rustle of leaves. It is just another occurrence in the vast open space of your life, and you are the one who is witnessing it all. And in that witness, you are perfectly, entirely at peace. This wisdom does not ask you to leave the world behind. It is meant for the moment your phone lights up with a message you were dreading, and your stomach tightens with a familiar urge to craft the perfect, protective reply. It is meant for the hour of the night, when the house is silent, but your mind is loud, obsessively, reviewing an interaction from the morning, and wondering if you have been misunderstood or judged. It is for those stretches of time when you look at the path of your life and feel like you are somehow falling behind, as if there is a race happening that you were never told about, and you are losing. You can apply this practice in the small flickering moments of your day. When you feel that sudden spike of heat, when someone says something that triggers a doubt in your own worth, you have a choice. You do not have to swallow that heat, and you do not have to lash out to defend yourself. You can just pause. You can take one breath, a real physical breath that moves all the way down into your diaphragm, and in that tiny gap of time, you can notice what is happening. You are not just a person being criticized. You are the awareness that is noticing the criticism. You are the space where the encounter is taking place. By simply breathing, you break the cycle of the automatic reaction. You turn off the machine that is trying to spin a narrative of your own inadequacy. Consider how often you check your phone for some kind of sign that you are seen or validated or secure. We do this because we feel a hollowness that we hope someone else can fill. But every time you reach out for that external assurance, you are essentially asking someone else to hold your ledger for you. You are saying that your peace depends on the next notification. When you notice this habit, you do not need to judge yourself for it. Just recognize it. To say to yourself, I am feeling a need for reassurance, and that is a human feeling. Then, instead of reaching, bring your attention back to your own body. Feel the weight of your feet on the ground. Feel the way your heart beats entirely on its own. You are already full. You are already held by the air, by the floor, by the fact of your own existence. Many of us live with a kind of internal script that says we must be perfect to be worthy of rest. We feel guilty when we sit down to read, or when we take a long walk without a destination, or when we simply lie in bed and do nothing. We feel as though we have not earned the right to exist unless we have contributed something, or solved something, or corrected something. This is the weight of the ledger we spoke of earlier, but the truth is that you do not need to earn your rest. Rest is the natural state of your being when you finally stop trying to hold up the sky. If you find yourself comparing your journey to the lives of others, remember the tapestry. You are seeing the finished, curated versions of their lives, while you are intimately aware of the frayed threads and the knots in your own. You are comparing your inside to their outside. That is never a fair trade. Everyone is weaving in the dark, and everyone is trying to make sense of the same complex, beautiful, and sometimes agonizing experience of being alive. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are, and that is the only place from which a new path can begin. You might feel the urge to push yourself harder tomorrow, to make up for the time you think you have lost. But what if you tried something different? What if, for one day, you decided to work with your own natural rhythm rather than against it? When you feel that you are not doing enough, treat it like a guest you do not have to invite inside. Let the thought happen, but do not offer it a seat at your table. Do not feed it with your attention. Do not let it take charge of your actions. You can acknowledge that the thought is there, and then you can simply get back to the work in front of you. There is a profound difference between being disciplined and being a slave to your own anxiety. Discipline is the act of showing up for your life with clarity and purpose. It is knowing what needs to be done and doing it with a steady, quiet heart. Slavery to anxiety is when you do the work because you are terrified of the outcome or because you are terrified of what others will think of you. You can have discipline without the fear. You can have clarity without the desperation. You can work hard because you care, not because you are trying to buy your own worth. Try to be gentle with the parts of yourself that are afraid of being exposed. Everyone has a secret version of themselves that they are afraid the world will see. We spend so much energy polishing our surfaces to hide the cracks, but the cracks are where the light comes in. Your vulnerability is not a flaw in the design. It is the texture of your humanity. When you stop fighting your own fragility, you find that you have a surprising amount of room to breathe. You find that you can speak more honestly, listen more deeply, and move through your day with a kind of ease you never thought possible. You do not have to fix your whole life tonight. You do not have to map out the next 10 years. You do not have to solve the mysteries of your relationships or the uncertainties of your career. The only thing required of you is this next breath. The only thing asked of you is to remain present with yourself, just as you are, without the need for a mask or a justification. You are a person, not a project. You are an inhabitant, not an architect. You are a participant in a vast, unfolding reality that is already taking care of the details. When you wake up tomorrow, the world will present you with its challenges. There will be stresses and there will be moments of doubt. But you can carry this practice with you. You can remember the feeling of the ledger being set down. You can remember the image of the leaves on the water. You can remember that you are the space, not the disturbance. And whenever you feel yourself beginning to tighten, whenever you feel the old, familiar need to control, you can choose to pause. You can choose to be kind. You can choose to be here, in the present, where the only thing that matters is the simple, honest, and enough reality of your own life. This is not a destination you reach. It is a way of walking. It is a way of seeing. It is a way of being that becomes easier the more you practice it. Do not be discouraged if you forget. Do not be upset if you fall back into the old habits. The practice is not in never forgetting. The practice is noticing when you're forgotten and coming back again and again with the same quiet patience of the tide returning to the shore. You are always welcome to return. You are always welcome to be exactly as you are. There is no standard you must meet, and there is no finish line. There is only this life unfolding in the quiet, and you are invited to be here for all of it. The loom is finally silent. The wooden needle lies still on the table, and the long, shimmering thread that traveled through your hands all day has reached its natural conclusion. You do not need to pull at it anymore. You do not need to check for knots or smooth the edges of the design. The patterns you created, with all their complexity and color, are ready to be left exactly as they are. The tapestry of your day, with its moments of strain and its flashes of light, is complete. Feel the heavy softness of the air around you. It is as if the room itself is weaving a blanket of quiet to hold you. Your hands, which have been gripping the idea of who you should be, are finally open. Let your fingers curl naturally, palms resting upward like empty vessels. There is nothing left to hold. There is nothing left to adjust. The frantic energy of the day has been drained away, filtered through the sieve of your own gentle observation. Notice how the darkness of the room feels like a deep, cool pool. It is not an empty space, but a space that is full of potential. When you let the tapestry go, you are not losing yourself. You are simply returning to the space where you began. You are becoming the quiet center, the unmoving point around which the world spins. You are the stillness that watches the weaving without ever being bound by the thread. Breathe into this space. Let the rhythm of your breath be the only movement. It is a slow, steady pulse, a tide that washes away the footprints of the day. Every time you exhale, feel a little more weight falling away from your bones. Let the tension in your lower back dissolve into the mattress. Let the busyness of your mind settle into the quiet, like fine sand, finally coming to rest at the bottom of a clear lake. You are allowed to step away from the loom. The unfinished edges do not demand your attention. The knots do not require an apology. The world outside will continue its cycle. The moon will trace its path through the sky, and the morning will come in its own time. You do not have to supervise the turning of the earth. You do not have to account for the shadows. You have been a faithful weaver, and now the sun has set on the work. Imagine that all the worries, all the plans for tomorrow, and all the lingering echoes of today are like threads you have carefully tucked away. They are not gone, but they are no longer in your hands. You have placed them in the safe care of the night. You are unburdened. Your heart, once so busy measuring the length and the quality of your own life, is now simply beating. It is a simple, rhythmic, ancient sound. It is the sound of life that requires no justification. Notice how your body feels when you stop trying to be the designer of your own experience. It is lighter. It is more spacious. There is a sense of ease that flows through you, a quiet river of relief. This is the truth you were searching for when you started this long, winding journey. It was never about finishing the perfect design. It was always about realizing that the loom was never the point. The point was the presence that witnessed the work. The point was the peace that lived behind the effort. You are drifting now, further and further from the shores of the busy mind. The sounds of the house are fading, becoming distant ripples on the surface of your awareness. The light in your room is dim, a soft, protective glow that asks nothing of you. You are becoming as still as the stone pool on the mountain. You are becoming as fluid as the water that moves through it. You are becoming as vast as the sky that reflects in the depths. There is no more need to look for answers. There is no more need to rehearse the future. There is only the sensation of being here, right here, held by the gentle gravity of the earth. Let your mind become as quiet as the sleeping forest. Let your spirit settle into the comfort of the dark. You are home. You are safe. You are exactly where you were always meant to arrive. In the absolute, unshakable silence of your own heart. The weaving has stopped. The loom is still. The thread has been laid down. All that remains is the profound, beautiful grace of existence itself, resting in the quiet dark. If you could see the pattern of your own life from the highest mountain, would you not see that every thread, every knot, and every mistake was part of a design far greater than your mind could ever account for?